The moment he stepped through the restaurant doors, the entire room changed. Conversations softened. Smiles disappeared. Several waiters glanced at one another before suddenly finding reasons to stay busy somewhere else. It wasn't because the man looked dangerous. He wore a simple navy jacket, carried no bodyguards, and gently held the tiny hand of a little boy whose eyes were filled with quiet curiosity. Yet everyone recognized Nathan Walker, one of the richest businessmen in America. They also knew the headlines that followed him everywhere since his wife's tragic passing. People whispered that he was cold, impossible to please, and known for walking out of restaurants after terrible service. But on that rainy evening in Seattle, Washington, the truth was far different from the rumors. And the only person willing to discover it was the shyest waitress in the building. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can change lives and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching stories. Your support helps these stories reach people who need hope. Nathan had spent the last 3 years trying to balance a billion-dollar company while raising 6-year-old Mason alone. Success filled every financial report, but silence filled his home. Every achievement reminded him of the person who was no longer there to celebrate with him. He stopped attending glamorous events, avoided interviews, and preferred quiet places where he could simply be a father instead of a public figure. Unfortunately, being famous meant people often saw the headlines before they saw the human being. Inside the restaurant, every server remembered internet stories claiming Nathan had impossible standards. Some believed he never smiled. Others insisted he left terrible reviews. None of them knew that most of those stories had been exaggerated by gossip websites chasing clicks. Fear spread faster than truth, and one by one the waiters quietly stepped away from his table. Near the back of the restaurant worked Grace Carter, a 24-year-old waitress who had been painfully shy since childhood. She rarely spoke unless necessary and often let louder coworkers take the better tables. Her life had never been easy. After losing both parents in a highway accident several years earlier, she worked double shifts to support her grandmother, whose medical bills seemed to grow every month. Every dollar mattered. Every hour mattered. Yet despite carrying so much pain herself, Grace never allowed hardship to harden her heart. When she noticed Nathan and little Mason sitting alone for several minutes without anyone approaching them, something inside her refused to stay silent. Her hands trembled as she picked up 2 menus and slowly walked toward the forgotten table. She greeted them with a warm smile that came naturally rather than professionally. Nathan looked surprised before returning a tired smile of his own. Mason looked up with bright eyes, clearly relieved that someone had finally noticed them. Grace wasn't trying to impress a billionaire. She simply couldn't bear watching a father and son feel invisible. As the evening continued, Grace noticed small details no one else seemed to see. Mason struggled to reach his straw, so she quietly adjusted it without making him feel embarrassed. Nathan looked exhausted, with dark circles beneath his eyes that no amount of wealth could erase. The little boy carefully colored on the paper kids menu while his father occasionally paused his work emails just long enough to admire each drawing with genuine pride. Watching them together reminded Grace that love often survived even after unimaginable loss. Nathan also noticed something unusual about Grace. She never treated him differently because of his fortune. She didn't ask for photographs, business advice, or stories about expensive cars and private jets. Instead, she asked Mason about his favorite superhero, complimented his dinosaur drawing, and remembered exactly how he liked his hot chocolate. For the first time in months, Nathan felt like an ordinary father enjoying dinner with his son. When dessert arrived, Mason quietly admitted that it was his mother's birthday. Grace froze for just a moment before gently placing an extra chocolate cookie beside his plate without adding it to the bill. She simply whispered that birthdays should always include something sweet, even when someone is remembered instead of celebrated. Nathan lowered his eyes, overwhelmed by an emotion he had spent years trying to hide. It wasn't the cookie that touched him. It was the understanding behind the gesture. Grace had somehow recognized a sadness that millions of people overlooked. After they left, several coworkers laughed, convinced Nathan would complain or leave a tiny tip. Instead, Grace found an envelope waiting beside the register. Inside was a handwritten note. It explained that kindness could never be measured by money, but sometimes it deserved to be recognized. Nathan thanked Grace for treating his son like a child instead of treating him like a billionaire. Folded beneath the note was a generous tip that was more than Grace usually earned in several months. Her hands shook as tears filled her eyes. She wanted to chase after him to return part of the money, but the restaurant manager stopped her. The note wasn't charity. It was gratitude. Grace quietly paid her grandmother's overdue medical bills, repaired the leaking roof of their small house, and continued working exactly as before. She told almost no one what had happened because she believed kindness lost its beauty when it became a performance. Several weeks later, Nathan returned. This time, Mason ran toward Grace with excitement the moment they entered. He proudly showed her a school project about heroes. Instead of famous athletes or movie stars, the final page featured a drawing of a smiling waitress holding a tray. The caption read, "Heroes are people who make lonely people feel welcome." Grace nearly cried. Nathan explained that Mason had struggled after losing his mother. He rarely trusted strangers anymore. Yet after meeting Grace, he had started smiling again during family outings. That simple dinner had reminded him that the world still contained gentle people. News of Nathan's repeated visits spread throughout the restaurant. Co-workers who once avoided his table suddenly wanted to serve him. But Nathan always requested Grace, because she reminded him that sincerity could never be replaced by perfect service. Months passed. One rainy afternoon, Grace finished her shift and found Nathan waiting outside. He had learned through the restaurant manager that the building housing Grace's grandmother was scheduled for demolition, leaving them with nowhere affordable to live. Without seeking publicity, Nathan quietly connected them with a nonprofit housing program his company supported. He made sure they received safe accommodation without placing his own name on the paperwork. Grace discovered his involvement only after thanking one of the program coordinators. She realized then that true generosity often happened where cameras could not see. Nathan and Grace slowly became trusted friends. There was never a dramatic fairy tale romance or unbelievable coincidence. Their friendship grew through ordinary moments. Weekend visits to children's museums. Charity events focused on helping struggling families. Long afternoons volunteering at community kitchens where no one cared about bank accounts or job titles. Grace encouraged Nathan to smile again. Nathan encouraged Grace to believe that her quiet voice mattered. Meanwhile, Mason flourished. The little boy who once hid behind his father's arm began making friends at school. His teachers noticed renewed confidence. His laughter slowly returned to the Walker home, bringing life back into rooms that had felt empty since his mother's passing. One winter evening, Nathan confessed to himself that success had once meant building billion-dollar companies. Now success meant hearing his son laugh from another room. Grace taught him that wealth could purchase comfort but never compassion. Compassion had to be chosen. Years later, Nathan established a nationwide hospitality scholarship honoring workers whose everyday kindness transformed lives. Instead of rewarding perfect customer ratings, the program celebrated empathy, patience, and humanity. The very first scholarship carried the name Grace Carter. She tried to refuse the recognition, insisting she had only done her job. Nathan disagreed. Serving food had been her job. Seeing invisible people had been her gift. Thousands of young hospitality workers eventually received educational opportunities because one shy waitress chose courage over fear on an ordinary rainy evening. The story spread across America, inspiring restaurants, hotels, and businesses to remember that every customer carried a story no menu could reveal. Some had lost loved ones. Some were fighting private battles. Some simply needed someone to notice them. Grace never became famous in the traditional sense. She never appeared on magazine covers. She never sought applause. Yet countless people unknowingly lived better lives because her simple act of kindness inspired others to do the same. And Nathan never forgot the lesson that changed everything. The world had bowed before his wealth countless times, but only genuine kindness had ever reached his heart. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to write the word kindness in the comments. We'd love to know where you're watching from, and your message may encourage someone else who needs hope today. As this story comes to an end, remember that the greatest opportunities to change someone's life rarely arrive with applause or recognition. They appear quietly, disguised as ordinary moments when everyone else chooses to walk away. One kind word, one welcoming smile, or one simple act of compassion can become the turning point in a stranger's life. We may never know the battles another person is fighting, but we can always choose to meet them with understanding instead of judgment. Sometimes the smallest act of courage creates the biggest ripple of hope. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue sharing inspiring stories that remind the world kindness is still alive. Thank you for watching, and may kindness always find its way back to you.